What is going on, everybody? My name is Avery, and welcome to another episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! In Depth. And I want to really just dive on into this because I just had to restart my recording after 10 minutes because I forgot to put Fabled Lurie in the deck. My stupid self. Anyway, make sure you smash the ever-living boo-boo stain off that like and subscribe button as we climb even higher, the 1500 ladder. I wanted to do an episode of Yu-Gi-Oh! In Depth on Ryzeal, specifically Fiendsmith Ryzeal, because I feel that the Fiendsmith engine makes Fiendsmith Ryzeal the best way to play Ryzeal, at least until we get Maze of the Master, where we get 7th Tachyon and 7th Ascension, which really help the pure Ryzeal build, especially once we get those new cards out of Supreme Darkness, like Twins of the Eclipse. I want to go over this card real quick before we get into the deck list, but it requires 2 level 4s, and for this card's Xyz Summon, you can treat rank 4 monsters you control as level 4 monsters for a material. You can detach a material from this card. This card can make up to 2 attacks on monsters during each battle phase this turn. If this card's sent to the graveyard, you can target 2 other rank 4 or lower Xyz monsters in your grave, special summon 1 of the 2, and if you do attach the other to it, you can only use this effect once per turn. So it's really interesting because it's almost kind of like you're playing 2 aggregators, but if you get this into the grave while you have, say, like a detonator and a duo drive in your grave, you can use the Twins effect to special summon out the detonator and attach the duo drive, and then use the detonator to attach the Twins of the Eclipse. So you end up having a double material detonator, which is very interesting, but I think that that's going to be much better to play. Again, once we get those 7th Ascension and Tachyon cards that help the pure Ryzeal deck be even more consistent than it already is right now. So I wanted to go through this because even though there are a lot of combo videos on YouTube and things, I'm pretty much the only Yu-Gi-Tuber, and I'm not being hyperbolic about that because no one else does stuff like this on YouTube, who does a Yu-Gi-Oh! In-Depth series, who goes in-depth, very deep with decks, especially things like Ryzeal that require a lot of technical play and are very skill-intensive and have a lot of skill expression, which makes me kind of hate the deck, but that's more because of the fact that I feel like with my terrible luck in this game, I'll pick what is technically considered the quote-unquote right combo line, and then I get punished by, say, like one hand trap because I'm not a mind reader. I can't see what the opponent has in their freaking hand. But besides all that, you do get rewarded a lot for your technical play. Reminds me a lot, especially veteran subscribers to the channel, remember when I was playing Garden Beat, aka Chain Beat, back in 2014, you know, playing Black Garden, Evil Swarm, Thunderbird, and Wind Up Rabbit and stuff, because that was considered good back in like 2014 or whatever it was. And you were very much rewarded for your technical play and skill level with the deck. And it was a really fun deck to play. This, on the other hand, doesn't feel as fun, but it's also the best deck in the room, and I just spent $1,200 to get everything for it. That's including the 6 Molcharmies, Fiendsmith Ryzeal. That includes everything. My holes still hurt. There was no lube in that at all. So let's go ahead and go on through the deck list, and then we'll discuss some of the numbers and ratios on hand traps. So we are playing 3 Ash Blossom, 2 Bysteals in the form of Druid Swarm and Magnemut. Very good at interrupting Fiendsmith lines. We're playing 3 Valor, 3 X Ryzeal, of course, the 1 Lurie, 3 Engraver with 2 Ghost Ogre, 3 Ice, 1 Lacrima, 3 Fualos, 2 Nibiru, 1 Node Ryzeal, 3 Sword Ryzeal, 3 Bonfire with double tracked, 1 Cross and 1 plugin, 1 Paradise with 3 Imperm. For the side deck, this is very experimental, and that's something else I want to mention too, is that this is more of a starting point deck list. This is by absolutely no means a perfect deck list, but people have asked for deck profiles in the past in this series, and I at least want to give you all a deck list that you can follow along with as we're doing combos and discussing it, and you can make changes as you see fit, right? So 3 Lancia, 2 more Bysteals in the form of Baldrake and Druid Swarm, 3 Perulia, 1 Cowboy for Time, 3 Talents, which could be crossouts. We'll talk about that near the end of the video, and then 3 Solemn Strike. For the extra deck, we're playing 1 Disarray, 1 Necroquip, 1 Chaos Angel, 1 Exciton, 1 Aggregator with 2 Detonator and 2 Duo Drive, 1 Typhon, 1 Agamunde, 1 Requiem, 1 Sequence, 1 Closed Heaven, and 1 SP Little Knight. You could swap out either the Sky Crisis or the Little Knight for a Bagooska if you choose to go down that route, because there are certain situations where your inboard can be a Detonator plus a Bagooska, and going into the mirror match, whether it's Fiendsmith Ryzeal or regular Ryzeal, is very good because it's very difficult for Ryzeal to out a Bagooska, and even if they do, if the Bagooska gets negated or sent back with, say, like Ultimate Slayer or negated with droplets, whatever, you're still going to have that detonator that you can use to pop cards, so do keep that in mind. Now, we are playing 18 hand traps in this deck. Breaking it down in the hypogeometric probability calculator, don't worry, I'm not going to bore you with the numbers and stuff, but all you need to know is that the population size is our deck size, in this case 41. Number of successes is going to be our number of hand traps, in this case 18. Sample size is going to be our opening hand, which is 5. Number of successes is how many hand traps we hope to open in our opening hand. In this case, it's 1. You can ignore all the numbers here except for the bottom one, which is 0.9551. You move the decimal place over 2 spots. You end up with 95.5%. Since this second number here, which is another 5, is 5 or higher, you are going to round up this whole number. So you're looking at a 96% chance to see one hand trap in your opening hand in a 41 card deck. You break that down to 2, you're looking at a 74% to see 2, and then to see 3, you're looking at a 38% chance, and of course it's just going to go down from there. If you're seeing at least 2 hand traps, or even if you're seeing at least 1 hand trap with a Call by the Grave, you're not going to be upset. But this number is important to keep in mind. You'll see people reference these numbers a lot, especially whenever you're building like 60 cards, where if you want the most mathematically optimal 60 card deck, you want 20 engine cards, 20 hand traps, and like 20 utility cards. So if you ever want to see like what your deck breaks down to with hand traps, you could just type in hypergeometric probability calculator and you're going to be able to find this. So that is the numbers on, or rather the ratios on the hand traps and why the deck is playing so many as it is. There are some, like if you look at the OCG, they'll play like on average like 11 to 13 hand traps with like 3 droplets. That's of course going to change up the ratios. Or if you decide to play more hand traps, of course that's going to change up your ratios. But again, this is just an example deck list to start with and move on from there. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into some combos and talk about why certain plays are made. And so here we are in solo mode. And really, I just want to take the time to go over like some basic combos of the deck before getting into like, you know, opening hands and niche interactions and things like that. So the starting point for a lot of combos is going to be like Ice Ryzeal or Sword Ryzeal, maybe even X Ryzeal, just depending on your opening hand, and possibly like Engraver. Again, it just depends on how you open. Again, this is a very skill expression filled deck, very skill intensive, I guess would be the better term. And that's due to the fact that depending on your opening hand is going to depend on what kind of board you make. And I already talked about earlier in the video how, you know, with my terrible luck, I make what is technically the right line, and then I just get punished for it because, I don't know, my opponent opened Ultimate Slayer in game 3, or they open Nibiru, and for whatever reason I don't have an out to the Nibiru. Like, it just happens, right? But the better you are with this deck, the more that you practice, the more you're going to get rewarded for it. So there is that. Well, again, I'll kind of get more into my opinions about it later, but I'm really not a huge fan of this deck. Like, if there was something more off the wall that I could play, I would definitely play it. But when it comes to the combos themselves, that is one great thing about this deck, is that it's not that hard. Like, at first I thought it was a really combo heavy deck, but it's actually not that difficult, especially because you don't have to play Small World. If this deck had to play Small World, I wouldn't play it because my brain ain't big enough to learn Small World connections. I'd need an aspirin 5 minutes into round 1 of an event. So let's go ahead and show this off here. Of course, it's just typical Fiendsmith lines. We're going to go Fiendsmith Engraver to get our track. You don't have to play 2. You could just play 1. I've seen some builds that play 3. Like if you look at Triff's build, he was playing fucking 3 track, like he was out of his mind. So you're going to add the Lurie, dump the Lurie. Lurie's effect is going to summon itself. Lurie is going to send off to make the Requiem. Y'all have seen this before. You've probably had dreams about this, or a nightmare, whichever you prefer. So we're going to tribute off the Whittle Requiem to summon out Lacrima. And then from here, you can dump either the Paradise or the Engraver. Again, I know I keep saying this, but it's literally how this deck functions. Like, it depends on how you open. Like, if you're sitting here with an opening hand of Ice Ryzeal plus Engraver with like 3 hand traps, then you're just going to make a Wave High King to insulate yourself from Nibiru, and then you're going to normal summon the Ice Ryzeal and just do your Ryzeal lines. So let's go with that, assuming like we just have nothing but like just other hand traps, right? So the Lacrima is going to go ahead and dump another Engraver, and I'm doing this because you can just dump the Fiendsmith and Paradise on the next turn. So we're going to go ahead and use the Requiem's effect to attach this to the Lacrima. We're then going to send both off in order to make the Necroquip. And then we're going to use the Engraver's effect, sending back the Lurie to then summon out the Engraver. From here, we're going to make the Wave High King Caesar. And my dumbass forgot to include Wave High King Caesar. I thought that there was something I was missing in this extra deck. Well, we're going to go ahead and just have the Sky Crisis represent Wave High King Caesar. So yeah, for this example then, we're going to take out Little Knight and put in Wave High King. I can't believe I totally missed not having Wave High King. I'm not starting over the recording. I already had to start it over one time because I forgot to put in Lurie. So yeah, pretend that this is Wave High King for a second. Oops. Yeah, anyway, so we're going to normal summon the Ice Ryzeal, and then we're going to use Ice. From here, you can either go X or sword. If you go sword to search X, you have to keep in mind that X says if you only control level 4 or rank 4 monsters, then you get a search. So that is something to keep in mind, but you can still special summon it by dumping off an Xyz monster into the graveyard. So for this example, we are going to go ahead and just search the sword. Sword's effect will get you the search, because if you summon X here, you're not going to be able to get the search because you control Wave High King. So we're just going to use sword to go for the X. Do keep in mind this gets you a light pyro, and X Ryzeal gets you if it will say here, a fire thunder. I'm still, for the life of me, trying to remember that. I don't know why it's so hard to remember, but it is. So now from here, you can either dump aggregator and summon out X Ryzeal, and you can make a 4 material detonator, because on summon the detonator will attach the aggregator, or you can make duo drive and then detach 2 materials in order to get cross and plug-in. Something that some people do, and I'll admit, I don't know why. I'm assuming it's due to the fact that, like, if you're playing cross out and or call by in your build, if you see cross out or call by in your opening hand, then you can go this route. But some people will use the X Ryzeal to dump either detonator or duo drive, and then slam, say, like, if I could move over this fucking thing, these 2 into duo drive. Now, because you have a Ryzeal monster in your graveyard, the duo drive is going to activate, attaching the duo drive to the duo drive. I don't understand why people say this helps you play through hand traps, because really it doesn't. And I feel like it's kind of misleading unless there's just something obvious that I'm missing here. This only helps you play through hand traps if you have like a cross out or a call by in hand, in which case you're playing through hand traps anyway. The duo drive does not detach for cost. So, like, let's say you declare the effect of duo drive and the opponent imperms you, you don't detach for cost. But somehow having this 3rd material helps you play through hand traps, which technically, if like you have this 3rd material and the opponent doesn't negate your duo drive, like let's just say you detach your 2 Ryzeals here, you're going to obviously search cross and plug in. Having that 3rd material on the duo drive does help you play through hand traps, because now when you activate the cross, if they try and hand trap you like Ash, Veil, or whatever, you can use the cross to negate on resolution, which is actually a really broken effect because you have this material. But the issue is that the biggest choke point in Ryzeal is duo drive. Like if you only open 1 hand trap, like say it's imperm, you hold that imperm for the duo drive. Like, you don't care about the Fiendsmith lines at that point. You're just going to imperm the duo drive, unless the player, for whatever reason, decides to like make disarray before going into Ryzeal combo lines, which if they're doing that, they're probably just holding cross out anyway, because they can get Nibiru'd out of existence at that point. But in this regard, it helps you play through if you get the search off, but this is going to be the biggest like Ash bait in the game. So I don't see where wasting your duo drive is helpful. The only other way, like outside of that, is like if you open cross, because then if you do end up detaching this, if you use like say Node Ryzeal to special summon one of these from the grave, then you'll end up having 2 Ryzeals in grave that you can then use the cross to send back both and then draw a card. So that is something else to keep in mind. So we're just going to say that the X Ryzeal dumps the duo drive because we've already made it to this point. So we detach 2 to get the cross and the plugin. And then from here, if you were playing Twins of the Eclipse, you could overlay the duo drive and the X Ryzeal here. This is where it's difficult because you can't really go down this line because the X Ryzeal isn't going to give you a search. But this is a route that you could do if you wanted to get to both cross and plug-in. And again, it all depends on how you open. You know, like if you've got Bonfire to get you to an extender, or, you know, if you wanted to get to Node Ryzeal instead, then, you know, you could play it differently. If you open X Ryzeal before doing Fiendsmith lines, you could normal summon the X and then search for, say, like a Node. So that is something to keep in mind. But for this example's sake, now that we've shown that off, we're going to go ahead and instead of making duo drive, for the sake of this here, we are going to actually just make a detonator, and we're going to use the X Ryzeal to dump aggregator. And then you can slam, since it's 2 or more level 4 monsters, you can use all of your level 4s. And now you can make a 4 material detonator, and then the detonator is going to activate to attach the Aggregator. So you end up with a 4-pop Detonator and a double negate Wave High King, since my stupid self forgot the Wave High King. Again, I apologize. And then if you detach the Aggregator, then on a new chain, Aggregator can activate target a face-up card on the field, negates effects to the end of the turn. This is a very solid board, especially if you have a couple hand traps in hand. And then you've got follow-up on the next turn because you can use Lacrima to summon out Requiem, Tribute, summon back out the Lacrima from the deck, dump Fiendsmith and Paradise. That's another interruption. So absolutely insane follow-up for the next turn. That's really what separates this deck from the rest of the competition. So let's go ahead and put the Wave High King in the fucking extra deck, and let's move on to the next combo. And so this opening hand here is actually a really interesting example of a hand that's really good going first and not the best going second, because you've got the Ash, and then you're drawing into Ryzeal. So you have plenty of engine, but the problem is that if your engine isn't enough to play through what the opponent already has set up, you're going to kind of lose. And it was interesting in my testing with this deck so far. I can't tell you how many times I've had, like, in the mirror match, someone summon Ice Ryzeal and I negate it with, say, like Ash Blossom, and they just pass. Like, they just didn't have enough engine. Sure, it's nice to have multiple hand traps in hand, but that is something to keep in mind moving forward when playing this deck. You may choose to drop down to, say, you know, like the OCG, 11 to 13 hand traps, and play, say, like 3 Droplet or some other kind of engine that helps you have follow-up 2 hand traps instead of just trying to play like a bunch of hand traps. So that is something to keep in mind when playing this deck. So we opened up Sword Ryzeal, so this is a fantastic normal summon. So let's go ahead and show off some other Fiendsmith lines, though. This line in particular, I really enjoy doing, but again, it loses hard to Nib and Ash. So only do this play if, like, you know, you can hit them with like a Talents, rip a card out of their hand, and then follow up with Ryzeal lines. Or if you're playing Cross Out, then Cross Out like Nibiru or Call by the Ash, you know, whatever the case may be, right? So, of course, we're going to do typical lines. We're going to go Fiendsmith, Engraver into the track. Track's going to get us to Lurie. Ditch the Lurie. Lurie gets summoned out. Lurie is going to send off for Requiem. We're just doing all the typical lines here. I cannot tell you how many times I've done this. Then we're going to go Lacrima, and then Lacrima's effect is going to specifically dump another Engraver, right? So this is our setup so far. We're going to use the Engraver. We're going to send back Lurie, right? Whoops. We're going to summon out the Engraver, and we're going to link both of these bad boys off. And then we're going to make Sequence. Sequence is going to activate sending back. It kind of depends on what you want to do. I like to leave Lacrima in the graveyard. So I would say you do like Engraver, Requiem, and Engraver to make the Disarray. In this build, Lacrima is only a 1-of, and I don't mind keeping it in the graveyard because if we end up making... well, actually, you want to keep it in the graveyard for this combo in particular, but also I like to keep it in the graveyard because... especially like if you already have Fiendsmith cards in hand, it's nice to know that you've got the follow-up like during the opponent's turn to send it back and summon out, say, like Requiem. Because Requiem isn't once per turn to tribute to summon. It's once per turn on the special and then once per turn to equip. So that's something to keep in mind. So we're going to go ahead and make the Disarray. And you might be thinking, okay, Avery, you equip, like that's the combo. Yeah, but we're going to keep on going. So we're going to link here. We're going to go into Agamunde. And here, we're actually going to use Agamunde's effect to bring out the Lacrima, and then Agamunde is going to attach itself. This is really good because now if we start doing Ryzeal combos, if the opponent nibs us during the combos, yes, it hurts, but you also have a lot of follow-up because you can just go Lacrima, summon out Agamunde, Agamunde gets you Disarray, and then the Agamunde is going to equip the Disarray. So that's absolutely insane that you have that follow-up. Obviously, they can nib you here. You still have this as follow-up, but typically I like to do this play whenever I have like cross out or call by, or if by the time, like, I don't know, you're regional or maybe you go to the YCS in Orlando, maybe the format's evolved to where nib just isn't a thing anymore, and then you can do this play turn 1 without any fear, or maybe you do it for like a game 2 or game 3 combo, you know what I mean? It just all depends. So the reason why this is good is because then if you have something like, say, Ryzeal, you only control level 4s, so you end up getting that search off of Ryzeal. So let's go ahead. We haven't even blown our normal summon here. So honestly, I'm just going to normal summon the sword. And actually, we kind of have to because we don't have any Ryzeals engraved. But even if this was like Ryzeal, we can normal summon it instead. Like, it just all depends. These cards are very flexible in what you want to do with them, which is just crazy. And they're also like all extenders. So Sword Ryzeal is going to search us a light pyro. So that can get us to Ice or X. We had to blow our normal summon, so I'm going to go for X here. And then we are going to go ahead. We've got 2 level 4s. Do keep in mind that Detonator is 2+ level 4 Ryzeals. I've made that mistake before. Whereas Duo Drive is just 2+ level 4s. So you could just make Duo Drive here and move on with your day and know that you've got an extender in the form of X Ryzeal. So let's go ahead and do that. This is going to go to Grave. We are going to go Duo Drive. You could also go for X here and dump off, say, like another Duo Drive and then attach it. But again, like I talked about in the last combo, like, why are we doing that? Like, just save it for the aggregator. I still don't understand why people say that helps you play through hand traps when you don't even have the fucking cross in hand. But again, there could be something I'm missing here that I'm just not seeing. Duo Drive, we're going to detach 2. We're going to go for the cross, and we're going to go for the plug-in. Why am I not able to find plug-in? It constantly passes me up. Okay, so if you decided to, whoops, that was the wrong card. If you decided to dump, say, like, Duo Drive with the X Ryzeal, then obviously this would still have more material, and then you could, like, play through stuff with Ryzeal Cross. But either way, it's not a big deal. We're going to special summon this. And then we are going to dump the aggregator because that's a good card. And then the Ryzeal X in this case is going to get us the Fire Thunder. So we are going to go ahead and go for the Node Ryzeal. And what's dope about this is that since this can resurrect Duo Drive, we have an Xyz monster on the field of grave, so we can summon out Node. We're going to go Node effect to send the Duo Drive. Now, even if they want to like nib us or something or use a hand trap, we can just go plug in to summon out Duo Drive and then attach a Ryzeal from deck and then on resolution negate with the cross. It's really adorable. We're going to use this to summon on out the Sword Ryzeal. And then from here, you can either make a 4-material Detonator, or if you're playing Baguska, you can slam 2 of these into Baguska. And then if you really wanted to, you could go like plug in to like summon 1 out or something. It just all depends. For this, I'm thinking, since we're not playing the Baguska, I think honestly I would just want to make a Wave High King because you already have the Disarray for follow-up on the next turn, because you can, remember, you can send this back to summon this and then attach it to the Disarray and revive it. Alternatively, instead of reviving Lacrima, since you also had Sequence, we could have revived the Disarray with this and then attach the Sequence and then just been sitting on Fiendsmith and Paradise and Ash. Like, that would have been crazy. We also had another Engraver in hand. So this would have been at like 5,800 and you would have been sitting pretty. This still would have been in your graveyard. So here, let us overlay, let's just do the Detonator line because Detonator is just so broken. Detonator, and then we'll attach the Meteor Logic aggregator to it as well. And then like if we had something like Ice Ryzeal in hand, then we could of course special summon that and then do like say a 3-material Detonator. And then if we played Baguska, then the other 2 level 4s would go into a Baguska, and then you have a bunch of follow-up. So again, just another really good example of how to drop out Detonator. You can do other things, like if we were playing Dugaris, you could overlay 2 into Dugaris, detach 2, and then draw 2. If we had another Ryzeal engraved, then we could use the cross to then send back 2 and then draw another card. So again, a lot of different ways that you can go with the hand. Let's go ahead and do some other test hands. Another piece of advice that I want to give for people who want to play this deck is definitely do a lot of test hands. Definitely take your time with it. There's nothing wrong in making a mistake, realizing that you made the mistake, and just getting better. I mean, hell, I forgot to put Wave High King in this extra deck. Again, this is a very skill-intensive deck. Take your time. Don't beat yourself up. Just do the best that you can in learning this deck, and look up YouTube guides. Whether it's watching, I don't know, Pack or MST TV, whoever it is that you prefer to watch, and just get better with it. Again, this deck is a deck that rewards a high level of skill, and the better you get with the deck, the more practice you do, the better you're going to be with it. So just keep that in mind. Try not to get frustrated, because that was exactly the issue I was having with this deck when first trying it. I was getting so aggravated and so frustrated because I kept making the wrong plays, and with plenty of practice, plenty of time, you're going to get better. So, and that's why too, like I said, if there's something I'm not noticing with some of these combos, feel free to put in the comments, because I'm always looking to get better. I'm a competitive player. I want to be the best player I can be. So if there's something I'm totally missing, by all means, put it in the comment section and, tell me I'm being a Momo. So What's cool with this hand is that we've got 2 hand traps, so we're really sitting pretty. We've got 2 unique hand traps, which is why I'm not playing 3 nib. I'm playing 2 in this case, because I don't want to see multiple nibs in my hand. Like, that feels bad. So, and then the buy steals, of course, are great for like either Chaos Angel lines or interrupting Fiendsmith combos. So in this case, we're going to go Bonfire. We already have Ice and X, so let's just see what other pyros we can search here. It's a shame that Sword Ryzeal isn't a pyro, and it's a shame that Node isn't a pyro. So, you know, in this case, let's go ahead and go for another Ice, because Ice is fantastic for follow-up. This can also, too, by doing this, even though we already have Ice, this baits out Ash. And if they droll us, we don't care about getting drolled, because we can just go Ice, special summon 1 from deck, and then you're sitting on a detonator with 2 hand traps. Or since we have the extender in the form of X, you can make a multi-pop with the detonator. In fact, let's go ahead and show that off here. So let's say that they drolled us, right? We went Bonfire, Search, Ice, and they droll us. Oh no, what will I ever do, Sugar Boo Bear? Well, you can either just go special summon X here and then get a search of like Sword, which is not terrible. But in this case, you could go Sword to get the, I don't know, the copy of it out of your deck. But let's go ahead and go with Sword Ryzeal. And then Sword is going to get us the Fire Thunder. So we can't search because, again, we're assuming that they drolled us. But do keep in mind that this can get you to either Sword Ryzeal, or it can get us to Node, because Node is also a Fire Thunder. So do keep that in mind. But let's just play this out as if they drolled us. So now we're going to dump the Aggregator to summon our X. And we could, if we wanted to go even further, like if we didn't fear Nib, we could send, like, say, the Nibiru to graveyard to summon out Ice, and then you have like a 5/6, what is that, 5 material? That's a 5 material detonator. You don't want to do that, because then they could just Nibiru you and then you just lose everything. But now we can slam all this together, even though that they drolled us, into a format detonator. And then the detonator will, of course, attach the Aggregator. And you might be thinking, Avery, this board's totally weak. It's totally fine. You basically have a Dryden here. The Aggregator can negate any face-up card in their field, and you got 2 hand traps. So you're sitting on 6 interruptions. If you're ending on 5 interruptions or better, you're in a really good position. And then for turn, look at that. We're drawing into Fiendsmith Paradise. Cool. And then we've got this for extender. So like we could do Fiendsmith combo since we have this. So that is a really good board overall. And what's cool with Ice Ryzeal, you don't have to waste your normal summon. So let's go ahead, or you don't have to worry about wasting your normal summon on it, I should say. Let's swap out the X Ryzeal for Ice, because you can actually do a Fiendsmith line here with Ice. Because you can go Ice, and then you can go either Sword or X. In this case, I'm going to go X Ryzeal, because Sword is better follow-up. So the X Ryzeal is going to get special summoned to the field to the Ice Ryzeal's effect. So, and then by summoning this, you get the search of the Fire Thunder, right? Yeah, Fire Thunder. So we'll just get Sword, because this is just better follow-up. If you end up with these on field or grave, you can summon this out. Now you can do Fiendsmith line, because the Exciton is a light fiend. You do this over Moon specifically because of the fact that you can use Moon to out Nibiru, which is not bad. Like, you know, you can link off with it, or, you know, whatever the case may be, or just, you know, use it in some way. You can send this back, of course, since it's a light fiend, you can use that with Engraver. So now we're going to do this, link this off. So now our Sword is still live, because that's in the graveyard. We're going to tribute Requiem. We are going to go for the Lacrima. You're pretty much always going to go for Lacrima unless it's some weird situation. So again, you can dump either Paradise or Engraver. We're going to dump the Engraver. You pretty much never really need to dump Paradise on your turn unless like you already have like an Engraver in the graveyard. You just want to go for like Wave High King. Again, it all depends. Take a shot every time I say it. It all depends how you open. So here we're going to send back the Exciton for the Engraver. From here, you could make Sequence, because you would have 3 materials to make Disarray. They can nib you. So I would say, like, unless you've got like a whole handful of hand traps, which you've already got 3 hand traps. So the best way with this kind of opening hand, with 3 hand traps, if you open up 2 hand traps or call by, or 3 hand traps, you're making a detonator and passing. Like that's absolutely insane. And since we already have Fiendsmith Engine, this becomes busted. So we're going to use the Requiem, attach it to Lacrima. We're going to send both of these off. We're going to make Necroquip. We're going to, if I could click the right card, we're going to overlay these. Oh my god. We're going to overlay these into Wave High King. And from here, we're sitting pretty, because now we've already used up our normal summon, but now we can special summon Sword. Because remember, we used our normal summon on Ice. So now Sword is going to get us a light Pyro. So we haven't special summoned X by its effect, so we can still dump the Aggregator. So let's go ahead and add the X, because we special summoned it off Ice. We haven't used its own effect to summon it. That's what I mean by like all these are both starters and extenders. So we'll dump the Aggregator to summon. We're locked into rank 4s. We don't care. We're not going to get the search because remember, we already searched off the previous X. That's how we got to Sword. And here, we actually also have Bonfire if we wanted to, like, say, send a hand trap to summon out Ice. But this is fine. It's really not a big deal. So here, we're going to overlay. You could do Duo Drive if you wanted to get Cross and plug in as well, which wouldn't be bad at all. Or you could use it to, like, get Cross and Node. It all depends. So, but here, well, actually, I kind of want to play that out now because I'm curious to see how it end up. But here you would go, say, Detonator, attach the Aggregator. You have a 3-pop Detonator plus the Wave High King with 3 hand traps. That's busted, right? Like that's, what are we talking? 2, 3 pops, that's 5 interruptions, 6, 7, 8 interruptions. The Aggregator to negate a card, that's 9 interruptions. You're hitting almost double-digit interruptions. That's incredible. So here, now that the idea popped in my mind, let's go Duo Drive. Let's see how it goes. Oh, actually, you do hit 10 interruptions because you've got the Lacrima with the Requiem engraved. So you can go like draw phase, summon this, bounce this, tribute for Lacrima, dump the Paradise. That's busted. So here, let's go ahead and go Duo Drive. Let's just see where this leads us. So here you could go Cross and plug in, and then set Imperm, and then you've got the Cross to send back 2 and then draw 1. Or you could go, say, like Cross plus Node, and then you could summon out Node and then dump the Duo Drive. But here, you could even, instead of dumping the Aggregator, you could have dumped another Duo Drive so that this has a material so that the Cross can negate. That's something else to keep in mind, too. If you decide to go this route, instead of dumping the Aggregator, just do that. But let's see where this leads us, since we have a bunch of different options here. We'll do Cross and plug in. We'll activate Cross, and even then, even though this doesn't have a material, we have plug-in, so we could just activate to revive one and then attach to the Duo Drive. Yeah, this is nuts. We could even go Bonfire to get Ice, and then send the Duo Drive to special summon this, because we haven't used its effect to special summon it yet. So, but the only thing is that we would need another level 4 on the field. So, but now we can go, say, Cross. And we could send back, say, I don't know, X to the bottom and Sword to the bottom. We'll draw a new card. And now we just hit another hand trap. That's insane. So your foregoing Detonator, depending on what other extenders you have, you end up drawing into another hand trap. But again, we could go plug in. So we end up with an interruption by having this attached and then reviving one. But I think what I would have done was just done the Detonator and then send back 2, draw 1. Maybe you still hit a hand trap, and then at that point you're sitting on 11 interruptions because you've got the Lacrima line and all that. So I feel like we've gone in depth enough on like some combos. Let's go ahead and go back to the deck list and talk about my opinions of the deck overall. So what are my opinions on this deck overall? And I'm also going to be talking about talents versus cross out. But first, let's get my opinions on out of the way because the talents point's really not a massive thing. If you are someone who likes to have a lot of skill expression in the game, especially if for the past few years you feel like Yu-Gi-Oh's been nothing but just brainless, spreadsheet combo lines where if you remember this one combo, you're going to succeed. You don't have to worry about hand traps. There's not a lot of back and forth in the game. You are going to really fall in love with this deck. This deck honestly reminds me, this is going to sound very Yugi Boomer of me, but it reminds me a lot of like old rank 4 toolbox decks like Gadgets back in the day, where especially like before Exceeds, where you'd summon a Gadget, search one, you had 1-for-1 removal cards like Smashing Ground, Fissure, Shrink to a lesser extent, and you would slowly control the game and grind out the opponent. And it's really cool to see this come into a new way in the form of Ryzeal, where it is kind of like Gadgets 2.0, where like Sword can get you a search, X can get you a search, Ice is basically like a Platinum or Gold Gadget, where it summons you out another level 4. So any sort of rank 4 toolbox deck that you can think of, Ryzeal is very similar to that. But now, in the modern age of Yu-Gi-Oh!, you're combining a very broken, generically good engine in the form of Fiendsmith, and then just dumping a bunch of hand traps because Ryzeal is such a small core engine, similar to Tenpai. And so you're grinding out the opponent. You're trying to, get the mind read on them, play mind games. You're very much going to enjoy this deck. I don't enjoy decks like this all too much for the simple fact that my motto with this game has always been that I've got dog water luck. Like, the joke I have on this channel is that if anyone's going to open up Nibiru against me, or open up Nibiru against somebody, it's going to be me. You could not be playing Nibiru, and a Nibiru will magically appear in your hand, and it's going to be because you're playing against me. It's the same thing with Salamangreat. Like, I always have the worst luck against Salamangreat. It could be a 0-5 at a regional Salad opponent, and they'll get one win against me because I just have such terrible luck against Salad. I don't know why. I hate that deck. If anyone's going to beat someone with Salad, it's going to be against me, right? Like, it just happens to some players. And so I feel very similar to that with the Ryzeal deck. I still feel like I'm trying to practice and get better at it because even though it is a very simple mid-range deck, there's a lot of underlying combos underneath the deck as a whole that really help make it shine when you're able to tap into things like that. I'm sure I made some misplays that I'm not even aware of going through some of the combos. There might have been a better way to make a board or a better way to do a combo that if you're not thinking about these lines, you may not see. Or maybe you get hand trapped a couple times and like you get flustered and now you're like, well, I don't know what to do. Make a wave high king and pass or something like that, right? Also, because that this is the best deck in the room, you're going to want tech cards that really separate your build from others. Some that I've looked at just to kind of see if they could work is something that actually, again, Gadgets used to play back in the day. 10 Goldfish. When it's normal summon, you can special summon a level 4 from the hand. You're a level 4 deck. That seems pretty good. Normal summon this, special summon X without having to use its effect. You're going to get a search because you got level 4s. Congratulations, you can make a duo drive because you got 2 level 4s. Things like that. Or playing a tech card like, if I could spell it, Kage Tokage. Again, an old level 4 monster that used to see play. When you normal summon a level 4, you could special summon it from your hand. It can't be used as a synchro material. It doesn't matter. You're going to use it as a rank 4 exceed material, and it's not once per turn, so having multiples of these in your hand is really good. Anything that is level 4 can technically be used as an extender in this deck if it has that kind of an effect. So it does make it fun to play in that regard. The side deck can also be very flexible, as well as the extra deck, depending on if you want to play Fiendsmith cards or not. Finally, I want to end off here. I've seen some builds playing Talents with Call By. Some builds don't play Call By. Some builds play Cross Out instead. It depends on how much you can make that read as a player, I feel. If you feel like you can play through a hand trap or play through a nib, whatever the case may be, Talents is going to be your go-to. You can go Talents, rip a card out of their hand, or draw more cards, whatever the situation may be. Whereas Cross Out, especially if you're fine with playing more hand traps, whereas Talents you can kind of get away with playing less because you don't need those Cross Out targets. Cross Out, you'll kind of want to play more hand traps because you want those targets in the deck or even in your side to bring in so that you have that target. So it really comes down to what you feel more comfortable with as a player. Do you want to play plenty of hand traps or play less and be able to include 3 talents? You could make the argument to cut this down to 15 hand traps and play 3 talents. Take out 3 hand traps, put in 3 talents. There you go. Or you could play 18 to 22, maybe raise the deck count a little bit and then play 3 cross out and or call by in the main. It just depends on what you feel the most comfortable with as a player. And I think that's really the biggest thing I want to hammer home is that this is going to be subjective to what players are comfortable with, and it comes down to how your opening hands are that you decide how you build your board. It's very similar to tier element in that regard. Like if you open up plenty of millers, you're going to probably be able to build a big board. But more with tier element, it also depends on what you mill, which can really make it RNG. Whereas with this, it's just more about, okay, how many hand traps did I open in relation to how many level 4 extenders did I open? How good is my opponent actually? And you can kind of get a read on them after game 1, even game 2, to see like how good of a player they actually are. I can't tell you how many times I've had people misplay against this deck and I just win because of it, because they just didn't have the knowledge, or I just get lucky with top decking an extender even after I misplay. Like it just happens. So I know that this was a bit of a long video, but I really wanted to go in depth with everything. Let me know if I missed something, because again, there is a lot to cover with these more meta-esque decks. Whenever we do a in-depth video about this, sometimes we tend to cover more tier 2 or rogue decks sometimes that I just think are a lot of fun. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.